Hi everybody, I'm Kendall Chapman, your Teen Services Librarian here at the Blue Hill Public Library. I'm here today to talk to you a little bit about Banned Books Week. Banned Books Week is an event that's put on every year by the American Library Association in conjunction with the Office for Intellectual Freedom. These two entities work together to bring awareness to censorship and illuminate some of the titles that are being attacked for the content that's inside them. The great thing about the American Library Association and the Office for Intellectual Freedom coming together to do this, especially at the time that they did, was back in the 1980s, there were a lot of people attempting to ban books in their communities. They didn't believe that the materials were appropriate for their children to be reading. They didn't believe they belonged in schools or in libraries. So the ALA and the Office for Intellectual Freedom came together to try and curb this a little bit. They spearheaded this week of celebrating banned books, along with a woman named Judith Krug, who was extremely passionate about shining a light on censorship and what exactly that means. She would host events all throughout this week, along with doing read-alouds, which consisted of her hosting a public event where she would pick a banned book and read her favorite sections out of the book. She did this all throughout her career until 2009 when she passed away. She was a really amazing woman and very passionate, and her legacy lives on in Banned Books Week. So Banned Books Week does exactly what I just mentioned, tries to bring attention to these books that are continually being challenged or banned within various communities across the United States. The ALA actually tracks how many books have been challenged to the best of their ability. You can go onto their website and actually submit a challenge that if you know of a challenge having happened or a book being banned, so they can add that into their statistics for the end of the year. Every year they compile a list of about 10 or 11 books, typically it's 10, that have been the most challenged books of the year. In 2019, they did the top 10 list, which I have over here. I'll bring it a little bit closer so you guys can see it a bit better. But these were the top challenged books of 2019. And I'm sure you'll see some familiar titles on here, like The Handmaid's Tale, which is extremely popular, even has a TV show out now. And then Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, which is shown on here as just Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, but it's actually the series as a whole that is being challenged. Harry Potter has actually been the most challenged and banned book of the 21st century. People continually challenge it because of witchcraft. They think that it's too spooky for children. They find that the magic is too dark, or on one of the more recent challenges, it was said that it actually contained real curses, and that was why it was being challenged. This past year, 2019, it was actually removed from the shelves in a few places across the United States because of the challenges that came out against them. This is a difficult thing to deal with. Everybody has their own values and opinions, and everybody prefers certain content over others, and that's just the way it is, and that's perfectly okay. Everybody's different, and that's the beauty of all of us coming together in the world. But what does that mean for books or information? Do we hide or take away information because we are afraid that it might be uncomfortable or might be too much? Where do we draw the line? As a librarian, part of my job is making sure everybody has equal access to information. And that's really important to me. I believe that all of these books deserve a place on the shelf, even if that doesn't mean they're for everybody to read. Not everybody's going to like the same book. Not everybody's going to approve of the same material, and that's okay. But I don't think that means we should be taking it off the shelf either. The tricky thing with challenging books is that often what it is people think that they're doing a good thing. They think the content might not be appropriate, or it's too heavy, or it's offensive. And they think by taking it off the shelf that they're doing a helpful, good thing in a way to protect kids and teens. Now, I can understand that on one hand, but on the other hand, we all have to grow at our own rate. We all have to make decisions for what we're reading. I do think that parents have every right to make a decision on what their children are reading, but there will come a point where they'll start making their own decisions, and that can be hard. And that's where I believe a lot of challenging of books comes in. One of the things that the ALA has done did put out a statement called the Freedom to Read Statement. And what that statement is basically saying that all information is valuable and deserves a place. When we come across somebody who is trying to tell us a book doesn't belong somewhere, as a librarian, it's partially my job to try to stop that from happening, try to have a rational discussion with somebody and explain why it does deserve a place on the shelf. It's my duty to defend these titles and make sure that everybody has fair access to them. That's all about having the freedom to read. Everybody wants to be able to choose the content that they're consuming. That is the basis for Banned Books Week. Everybody has a difference in opinion, and I think we're always going to see that people are trying to censor materials that they don't believe deserve a place on the shelf. But we all have to make those decisions on our own if we want to consume that content or not. Now, I want to talk a little bit about some of the books that I have on display here. Most of these are books that I really love or are very popular in the library. One of them is my all-time favorite book of all time, but we'll get into that. So I thought it would be fun to give you an idea of why some of these books in particular have been challenged and why they still deserve a place. I really want to start with this book. This is Drama by Raina Telgemeier. It is a graphic novel, a middle grade graphic novel, but I think is great for high school students as well, and even adults. I just read this recently for a class that I'm taking, and I loved it. It's a really sweet story about friendship and accepting people for who they are and finding your confidence when you might be struggling. Unfortunately, this book was one of the top books of 2019 to be challenged. Drama was challenged for having LGBTQ plus themes, for having sexual references, and not having appropriate family values. Now, what does that mean exactly? It's different to every person because every person has a difference of opinion on what's appropriate or not. I think this is a great book. It's a sweet story about friends, and there's a coming out story in here about a boy, and I think this would be really beneficial for a lot of kids or teens that are struggling with coming out themselves and having the confidence they deserve to have. I highly recommend this book, and this is a library copy, so you can check it out if you'd like. Next, this is actually not a book that we have in the library. I brought it from home, but I want to talk about it because it's so interesting, the circumstances that keep popping up around this book. This book is Forever by Judy Blume. This is an older book. It came out when my mom was still in high school, which was back in the 70s, excuse me. She was born in the 60s. Hopefully she doesn't watch this because she might be a little upset with me revealing that information. But she read this when she was in high school. It's called Forever, which I mentioned earlier. Got a little flustered, I guess. But the funny thing about this book is even though it came out so long ago, it was just challenged in 2005. That's really recent in the world of books. 2005 really wasn't that long ago, and the reason it's challenged is for sexual references and offensive language. This book is a beautiful story. I personally love it, and it really covers growing up, being a teenager and finding your first love and moving forward in your relationship and expressing that to each other. I can see why some parents might not want their teenagers reading this book, but I think it's really great for teens to be able to see themselves reflected in a novel like this one. I highly recommend this one as well. Just about anything by Judy Blume is excellent, and she always has a very really real life outlook on creating these stories, which is nice to see. Third is the book Eleanor and Park by Rowell. As you can see, this has won an award. It's an excellent book, but it has been challenged for offensive language. Now, it's no secret, Rowell is my favorite author. I love all of her books, and I've also met her in person, and she is a gem. She's so lovely. This book does have some offensive language in it, or what some people might consider offensive. Really what it is swearing. Now, not everybody likes swearing, but it's realistic. A lot of teenagers swear. A lot of people swear. It's just a part of life. But I don't think that warrants it being taken off the shelf at all. This book is so important. It has the sweetest relationship, and it really covers some heavy topics, such as living in an abusive household and finding a way to get out of that bad situation. I love it. I think it's a beautiful story. And I would love to hear more from Rowell about what Eleanor and Park are up to. If you haven't read this one, definitely recommend it. Now, another one that everyone will probably recognize is The Hunger Games. This book has been challenged multiple times because of insensitivity, offensive language, violence. The list goes on. Now, there is some violence in The Hunger Games. I mean, it's a book, a trilogy really, about teenagers going to kill each other. It can be pretty dark sometimes, but it's an awesome story. I love those books. I flew through all three of them in a weekend when they first came out, and I stand by them. Yes, there's some violence, but it also shows somebody coming up out of hardship and being strong and finding out what matters for their family and what matters to them. I think that is really important. And in my experience, most of the teenagers that I talk to about this book love it. It's one of their favorite titles. And I don't believe that it should ever be taken off the shelf. This other book is The Giver by Lois Lowry. This is another favorite book of mine. I personally think it's a beautiful story. It is set in a future that hopefully we never have to see. People don't get to make decisions for their own. They live in a world with no color. They are essentially created. There's no biological children. families are paired together. Everybody is told what their job will be. There's no room for romance or friendships, really, once you get to the point of being told what your career will be. Now, the main character of this book ends up becoming the giver, which is the person who holds all of the memories of history and for their community. A tough job. He's a teenager, and once he starts to realize how different the world was or could be and how much freedom he could have, he starts to turn away from the community that he's grown up in. He wants a better life. This book has been challenged because of darker themes and inappropriate content for teens. Now again, that's up to you to make that decision. But this book has some really valuable insights into the direction that our society could be headed, and ultimately has a beautiful ending. I saved the best for last. This is my all-time favorite series, or I should say, I guess series, because I love all the books. It's hard for me to pick one favorite out of this series, but I love Harry Potter. I've read Harry Potter every year since it's come out, and I will continue to read it every year since it's come out. This is a staple in most households that have books. This book has brought me together with some friends. It's very special to me, yet it is the most challenged and banned book of the 21st century. People continuously try to ban Harry Potter because of witchcraft, magic, and most recently, because of real curses. I don't know what people think these real curses are, but it's just a story. And with that comes some great lessons. Yes, it's just a story. Yes, it's a fantasy world, and there is magic and crazy creatures and adventure and chaos, but there's still a lot to be learned from this book, like how sometimes friendship is more important than other things, or how discrimination is not okay, or how you have to fight for what you believe in. There's a lot to be taken from a book like Harry Potter, or a series like Harry Potter, and to see it continuously be banned is really hard for me because I love it so much. But again, everybody has their preferences. Everybody has their ideas of what they want to be consuming for content. All of that being said, I hope that you've taken something away from this, that maybe censoring a book to take it away from everybody else is not necessarily the best route to go. I think that it can be hard sometimes to let somebody read a book that you don't agree with, but that's how we learn. We all learn by taking things in at different rates and in different ways and through different mediums. And it's important that everybody has equal access to those materials or books or that information that they're seeking, whatever it is. And part of my job is to be here and help you do that. Now, if you have any questions about banned books or have any questions about how to get your hands on any of these books, you can reach out to me. You can send me an email or call me at the library. If you'd like to email me, my email is kendall.chapman@bhpl.net, and the phone number for the library is 374-5515. I'd be more than happy to talk to anybody about banned books, or if you have stories that you want to share about banned books that you love, I would love to hear them. I really hope that you all enjoyed this little mini presentation, and welcome to Banned Books Week.